In the third year of my marriage to Adrian, he became increasingly cold toward me. At the birthday party, despite the fact that I had practiced carefully for half a month, he bent down and invited his first love to dance the opening dance. His first love put her hand on it and gave me a disdainful look. "Sister Margaret, you wouldn't mind if I borrowed your husband for a bit?" Adrian didn't even turn his head. "Don't worry about her. Just watch your step." Surrounded by strange looks from everyone around me, my nails dug into my palms. There's no point in pretending to be respectable. I suddenly stood up and overturned the table. In Adrian's shocked and angry eyes, I took off my wedding ring and smashed it in his face. I might as well go crazy. A brightly lit banquet hall. Adrian, who was covered in stains, protected Helen behind him and said angrily, "Margaret, what are you crazy about?" Helen poked her head out from behind him, her voice trembling with fear. "Sister Margaret, what's wrong with you? Let's talk it over. Don't be so crazy." "I'm crazy? They say I'm crazy." Under the disgusted and fearful eyes of the people around me, I felt as if I was being pricked by needles all over and even my hands were shaking slightly. I breathed slightly, hid my hands behind my back, and looked at this slutty couple with cold eyes. My vision was hazy for a moment. It seemed as if I saw the young boy protecting me behind him in the midsummer of that year. I blinked, the memory shattered, and I clearly saw the mature Adrian protecting others behind him and looking at me coldly. There was a constant buzzing sound in my ears. Adrian had an angry look on his face, and his lips moved in and out, but I couldn't tell what he was saying. It looked like he was accusing me. I let out a breath. It's good to go crazy. Isn't it better to go crazy like this than to put on a brave face and pretend that everything is fine, trapping myself in a cold and loveless marriage for the sake of respectability? I took off the ring I had worn for 3 years and smashed it hard on Adrian's face with all my strength. "As you can see, I'll go crazy and you'll dance. I hope you'll jump into the garbage dump hand in hand and rot and stink together." Adrian didn't notice what was thrown at him, but subconsciously protected Helen again. "Margaret, don't be so vicious." I didn't want to hear another word, so I turned around and walked out. It was pouring rain outside. It's not far from where Adrian and I live, so I can walk back quickly. I thought calmly and stepped into the rain without hesitation. However, the grievance and despair that could not be suppressed surged up in my heart, and tears fell together with the rain. I lost even the last bit of my dignity. The marriage I had worked so hard to maintain finally ended in disgrace. I lost all my dignity, but I felt a sense of relief that I hadn't felt for a long time. I returned to the house where I had lived with Adrian for 3 years, changed my clothes hastily, and started packing. There weren't many things in the house that belonged to me alone. In the first 2 years of our marriage, our relationship was still very good. He knew that I liked exquisite handicrafts, so he accompanied me to collect them everywhere. He also insisted on buying 2 copies, saying that the things in the house should also be couples' items like the owners. I spent the days and nights when he treated me coldly by guarding these handicrafts. I walked past these cabinets and took nothing. I didn't want anything that had anything to do with him. I went back to the bathroom and quickly put on some light makeup to cover up the traces of crying. No matter what happens in my marriage, I will always be the most decent Margaret. As soon as I walked out the door with my suitcase, I ran into my neighbor who had just returned from the opposite door. The elevator was already going up. I pressed the button, straightened my back and waited. The neighbor aunt glanced at the suitcase at my feet and hesitated. "Margaret, where are you going? Where are you going?" She stumped me with her question. I married Adrian right after graduation, and I really had nowhere to go after leaving this house. I thought about it and smiled at the neighbor aunt. "Let's go to the hotel." The neighbor aunt hesitated after hearing this. "Did you and Adrian have a fight?" I shook my head gently. "No, we are getting a divorce." The elevator arrived. I smiled politely at my neighbor aunt in the face of her astonished eyes, picked up my suitcase and entered the elevator. Her surprise was to be expected. After all, she knew how I had managed to maintain my dignity for the past year. I care a lot about my dignity and won't allow myself to show even the slightest bit of embarrassment to others. So when I noticed that Adrian frequently had an unfamiliar scent of perfume on him, I was at a loss. But she still managed to remain calm and told him to be careful about his distance from other women. Adrian threw his coat down impatiently. "I already told you it was an accident. Can you please stop being so suspicious? It's annoying. We had a big fight. I pinched my palms to suppress the grievance in my heart and wanted to go out to relieve my emotions, and I happened to meet my neighbor aunt. Perhaps because the quarrel was too loud, she asked hesitantly, "Did you have a quarrel with Adrian?" I was nervous, but I subconsciously put on my best smile. "No, there was just a little controversy while we were watching TV. I'm sorry to bother you guys." Later, Adrian came home later and later, and on my birthday, he didn't come home all night. I was alone watching the carefully prepared dinner. I watched the clock slowly turn half a circle, and the light outside the window gradually brightened the room. He really didn't come back. I washed off the fatigue on my face, went out to buy breakfast, and met my neighbor who was coming back from morning exercise. The neighbor aunt kept talking about her grandson, and then hesitated and said, "Adrian didn't come home yesterday. My son came back late and temporarily used your parking space, but he moved the car away before you came." My hand shook uncontrollably for a few times, and I smiled softly. "Well, he had urgent work yesterday, so I let him sleep in the company." Maybe she believed it, or maybe she didn't. It was not until Adrian hadn't come home for a long time that she asked, "Do you have any conflicts with Adrian? I've been through this before and can help you." My head buzzed, but I still smiled appropriately. "No, we have a good relationship. He is on a business trip recently." I heard my voice seem to tremble. "It's inconvenient to always stay in a hotel. I made an appointment with an agent to look at houses after get off work on Friday, planning to rent a house near the company." As soon as I walked out of the company, I saw a familiar car. When he saw me coming out, Adrian got out of the car. The tall and handsome man stood next to the luxury car, attracting many people's attention. My colleague next to me pushed me teasingly. "Your husband is here to pick you up from get off work, so I'll leave first." I looked at Adrian, who was getting closer and closer, and said goodbye to my colleague with a smile. "See you tomorrow." Adrian obviously heard the teasing words of his colleagues. He glanced at me with an expression that said, as expected, "It's been 3 days. Enough of that. You really went too far that day, but Helen is kind and doesn't care. Go apologize to her and the matter will be over. Helen has been learning dancing since she was a child. Wouldn't it be better if I danced the opening dance with her? Don't be so petty." I looked at him coldly, as if I were looking at a stranger. Adrian didn't notice at all and continued talking. "And you should apologize to the guests who came to the birthday party as well. Do you know how rude it was for you to go crazy that day? It was so disgraceful." I sneered, "They have dignity, but where is mine?" Adrian frowned at me. "What dignity do you want? Weren't you the one who went crazy first?" I laughed out loud. It turns out that even if you are desperate, there will still be layers of disappointment. If you can push a person into the abyss, the malice is endless. "Adrian, you know best how much I care about my dignity. As far back as I can remember, I have been selling vegetables on a messy street. I would squat beside the vegetable stall wrapped in dusty and dirty clothes, and people passing by would feel pity for me and stop to look. Mom can sell more vegetables. She can make more money after closing the stall every day, and she will scold me less." But this trick no longer worked after a few years. Because people who often come to buy vegetables found that no matter how often they patronized the stall, the thin little girl squatting next to the vegetable stall still wore the same tattered clothes year after year. The vendors on the same street also talked about it, saying that the woman selling vegetables on the street deliberately didn't buy clothes for the child so that she could pretend to be pitiful and gain sympathy. I didn't understand, but I could feel that the look in their eyes when they looked at me was filled with thorns of malice. The look that hurt me the most came from my mother. She realized that this trick didn't work, so she got so angry that she beat me with the cane she used to tie vegetables. The cane hit my body, leaving burning marks. I hid in pain and my cries echoed through half the street. Finally someone couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Stop beating the child. I'm going to buy some vegetables." Mom discovered a new trick. She let me cry beside the stall and stop the passers-by while crying. "Uncle and Aunt, please buy some vegetables. My family's vegetables are delicious." I didn't want to stop them, but if I didn't my mother would beat me. Customers who were stopped too many times avoided me like the plague, and vendors whose business was taken away hated me to the core. When I got home, my mother would scold me, saying that I couldn't attract many customers and was a useless burden, and she wouldn't allow me to eat dinner in the evening. I curled up in a corner where the light couldn't reach, listening to my mother sitting on the bed, counting money, and scolding me. With the scolding buzzing in my ears, I held my growling stomach, lay down on my straw mat, and slowly fell asleep. I know my mother hates me. On the day I was born, my father was driving tired and had a car accident in his attempt to get home. As soon as my mother came out of the operating room, she heard the sad news that her husband had died. She cried and cursed, saying that I was a disaster star and that I had brought death to her own father. She should have strangled me to death earlier. The nurses stopped her from touching me, so she had no choice but to take me home. My mother hates me. Except when I act pitiful in public, she doesn't allow me to call her mother. She didn't buy me new clothes, didn't let me sleep in the same bed with her, and didn't let me go to school. She was going to starve me until she found out I could help her make a little extra money. But these methods are not a long-term solution. Later, my mother dressed up carefully every day, and everyone called her the vegetable she-sure. I looked up at this fierce, beautiful woman, and I was afraid of her. But she is my mother. It doesn't matter if I am not good-looking, as long as my mother is good-looking. The reputation of vegetable she-sure spread farther and farther, and finally one day, she happily closed her vegetable stall early and went home. A strange man held my mother's hand and helped her pack her things. They went out happily, carrying bags and boxes. I felt an unknown panic rising in my heart, and I grabbed the corner of my mother's clothes. "Mom, where are you going?" Mom broke away from me and said, "I'm not your mother." I followed them crying, asking her where she was going and begging her to take me with her. When we got to the street where vegetables were sold, she turned around impatiently and pushed me down. "Don't follow me, get out of here." I fell to the ground, feeling pain and fear, and suddenly remembered that my mother had knelt on the ground begging to exchange me for my father. I struggled to get up and kneeled in front of my mother, crying breathlessly, "Mom, please don't leave me, please take me with you." My mother was furious and kicked me down. "I told you I'm not your mother, you shameless burden, get out of here as far as you can." She kicked me hard again, afraid that I would follow her, and hurried away with the man. I was lying on the ground, my face buried in the smelly sewage, and I was in so much pain that I couldn't get up. I gasped for breath desperately, and allowed others to point fingers at me like an animal to be slaughtered. People around me gathered together and watched, whispering, and looked at me with pity as if I were an ant. There was a continuous buzzing sound in my ears. I tried to cover my ears with trembling hands. When I think of the looks of pity or disgust I received over the years, my whole body feels like it's being pricked by needles. The last thought was, I must be respectable in the future, never be thrown away like trash, and never be randomly criticized by others. Don't be embarrassed. I want to be decent. Adrian is the only one who knows my past. He used to understand me the best and would give me the dignity I wanted. So I gritted my teeth and held on to a marriage that was in tatters. But not anymore. I crossed my arms and looked at Adrian. "Are you done? Since you're here today, I'll take this opportunity to inform you that we should get a divorce." Adrian was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't hear clearly. "What did you say?" "The divorce agreement will be drafted and sent to you in the next 2 days. See you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 10 a.m. next Monday." I turned to leave, but Adrian caught up with me and grabbed my arm. "Margaret, what's wrong with you?" I reflexively struggled to get away. "I'm not crazy." Adrian looked me over. "Playing hard to get, eh? Do you think you don't have to apologize to Helen by threatening me with divorce?" I laughed angrily. "Mr. Adrian, if you can't hear clearly, go to the hospital to treat your ears. Please be polite and don't bother me." The agent was waiting for me not far away. As soon as I took a step forward, I heard Adrian say behind me, "There is a limit to madness. You'd better not regret it." I sneered and walked quickly towards the agent. The agent greeted me enthusiastically, and couldn't help but look back at Adrian. "Ms. Margaret, is he your suitor?" "He's quite handsome." I clenched my hands and took a deep breath. "It's my ex-husband." The agent was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't know what to say, and finally managed to say, "Haha, then he's so active, is he trying to get back together with you?" "No, he cheated on me and asked me to apologize to the mistress." The agent's face turned green. He was full of regret. "I'm so sorry, Miss Margaret, please don't take what I just said to heart, I have a few well-secured properties to introduce to you." I laughed and gently loosened my clenched hands. "It's okay. It doesn't seem so painful to say it. It feels good without having to pretend too much." At 10 o'clock in the morning, Adrian showed up at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I took out 2 divorce agreements. "I'll send you the documents this weekend and read them." If there's no problem, sign them. Adrian looked at me solemnly. Do you really want a divorce? I was puzzled. What else? Sign up and go in to complete the formalities. I'm in a hurry. Adrian's eyes fell on the divorce agreement. My name was already signed on it, and only his signature was needed. He was silent for a while, then raised his eyes and stared at my face. I won't get a divorce. I don't understand. Adrian, it has come to this point, why delay any longer? He ignored me and just kept talking to himself. Why do you want a divorce? We obviously love each other very much. No one in the world understands each other better than us. Margaret, you are throwing a tantrum again, aren't you? I looked up at him. That was in the past. It's time for a divorce now. Adrian suddenly got excited and grabbed my arm. Margaret, we love each other. I remember every little habit of yours. You don't like vegetables, so I have to squeeze fruit and vegetable juice for you to drink. You like new clothes, so I buy you a lot of beautiful clothes. Yes, he understands me best. When I was a child, I could only eat rotten leaves that couldn't be sold, so I hated eating vegetables. In order to supplement my vitamins, Adrian researched a lot of delicious fruit and vegetable juices and coaxed me into drinking them. I used to wear the same clothes for years, so I like new clothes that are clean and beautiful. I am happy even when I try them on. Adrian took the time to accompany me to try on each piece of clothing, and he always praised me in different ways. I don't want to get married yet. My mother's madness after losing her husband has made me afraid of marriage. It was Adrian who softened me with his meticulous love and care and made me believe that it would be a good thing to marry him. So I insisted on maintaining this marriage. Because I once loved Adrian. But the empty and lonely nights eroded all the love. I found it funny to watch him count one by one. That was in the past, Adrian. I don't love you anymore. Adrian froze suddenly. Adrian, I don't love you anymore. Let's stop torturing each other and get a divorce. Adrian shook his head. No, you're lying. He tore the divorce agreement in his hand into pieces. I won't get a divorce. It's impossible that you don't love me. You're just angry because Helen is angry. Yes, you're just angry because Helen is angry. You're jealous. Adrian's eyes lit up, as if he had grasped a life-saving straw. Helen and I have nothing. I still love you. If you don't like me dancing with her, I won't dance. Okay, be good, let's go home. I took a step back and looked at the scraps of paper falling to the ground. Adrian, if you tear up one copy, I can print out 100 copies. Don't do this in vain. As for what happened between you and Helen, I don't care. Or do you want to use her as evidence of your infidelity so that you can give me an extra share of the property? Adrian raised his voice. I didn't cheat. Helen and I didn't do anything that crossed the line. You just misunderstood. I will change. I didn't want to argue anymore, so I turned around and got in the car. It doesn't matter. If you don't want to go through the formalities, I will file for divorce. When Helen came to my door, I was discussing a new restaurant nearby with my colleagues. Seeing her blocking the company's entrance, I walked past her without even looking at her. Sister Margaret, please stay. Seeing that everyone around me was looking at me, I patted my colleague's hand helplessly and motioned her to go first. What's up? Helen had a smug yet hypocritical smile on her face. Sister Margaret, I have something to tell you. Would you be so kind as to have a cup of coffee with me? I walked past her and said, let's go to the one next door. Helen was in a good mood. She sat down and ordered a cup of coffee and a few desserts. Sister Margaret, don't you want something to drink? No need. Seeing you makes me lose my appetite. If you have something to say, just say it quickly. Helen's smile froze for a moment. As expected of someone who can smash a table in public, Sister Margaret is really mean when she speaks. I sneered. It seems that I am not fierce enough. I didn't smash the cup on your head to let you know that I am fierce and dare to speak like that. Helen couldn't help laughing at my constant barrage. Margaret, you're just showing off your quick words. I heard Adrian wants to divorce you. I'm surprised to see you still so energetic. She lowered her voice and said, it's so undignified. Are you feeling very uncomfortable? My breath caught in my throat. How could Helen know that Adrian even told her this? My heart was filled with pain, and I dug my fingertips into my palm, forcibly holding down my trembling hand. I looked up and saw Helen observing me. and I let out a breath. I threw away a piece of trash. Why should I be sad? It doesn't matter, even if she knows, it doesn't matter. I've already gone crazy, and the world hasn't collapsed because of it. I am not the same person I was back then. I will never bow my head to my enemies again. The buzzing sound in my ears gradually subsided, and I smiled and said, "You'd better urge him to get the divorce procedures done as soon as possible. Don't be such a loser that you can't even do this." Helen's face darkened. "You don't have to provoke me, Margaret. On the contrary, you should not regret it again." "Why are everyone saying that I will regret it?" I stood up and looked down at Helen. "I won't, and I hope you won't either." I walked past Helen and whispered, "Don't forget my blessing for you. I hope you can jump into the garbage dump hand in hand and rot and stink together." Adrian started sending bouquets of flowers to the company, just like when we were first in love. We didn't have much money then, but Adrian would often bring me a fresh flower. He said that if others have it, I should have it too. Now, looking at the big bouquet of beautiful roses in my arms, I can no longer feel any joy. He still remembered that my favorite flower was roses, but unfortunately that was a year ago. During the Cold War, I liked lilies. My colleague took the flowers I gave her and said with a smile, "Our Miss Margaret is so charming. She has been married for 3 years and still has suitors sending her flowers." I shook my head. If you ignore the wishes of the person concerned, you can't be called a pursuer. That's harassment. After sending flowers for a week, Adrian finally couldn't hold back and waited at the company entrance with roses in his hands. He had a good-looking appearance, and when he came over with the flowers, there were small exclamations from the crowd. My colleague excitedly pushed me and asked, "Did your husband know that someone sent you flowers and couldn't wait to claim his sovereignty?" "It was him who sent you the flowers." My colleague was confused for a moment, as if he remembered that I distributed flowers to all my colleagues this week. "You two had a fight, and he came to make peace?" "Adrian has walked up to us." I turned to look at my colleague and said clearly, "We are getting a divorce. The mistress is the one who came to see me 2 days ago." My colleague's face turned pale. She obviously still remembered how proud Helen was at that time. She glared at Adrian, who was pale, and took my arm. "You scumbag, please take a detour and don't delay us from having dinner." I looked at her indignant expression, and suddenly I felt a part of my heart soften. In fact, it is not that difficult to admit that you have had a failed relationship. It is much easier than pretending to be glamorous on the surface but secretly suffering behind the scenes. Adrian stopped us, his voice trembling slightly. "This is a misunderstanding, there is no mistress, please step aside." The colleague looked at him awkwardly and said, "It might not be a good idea for me to listen here. I'll be waiting for you not far away. If anything goes wrong, I'll rush over immediately." As soon as his colleague left, Adrian seemed to feel a little relieved. His face was pale. "I know you misunderstood me and Helen, but there is nothing between me and her. I live in the company when I am not home, and I don't know she has come to see you." I didn't say anything. "It's my fault for making you misunderstand me, Margaret. I was wrong. I just wish you could take the initiative to come to me. You know, it's impossible for Helen and I to be together. I will never be with her no matter what. Margaret, we can start over," I said softly but firmly. "No. Adrian, what did I do wrong to deserve your love and have all my dignity torn apart by you?" Adrian's breathing became rapid and he seemed to be staggering. "Yes, we understand each other too well. Not only does he know that I need dignity the most, I also know that he needs it." Adrian and Helen were high school classmates. The proud and unbridled boy fell in love with his shy deskmate. He pursued her vigorously, brought her water and food, ran with her, and stood with her when she was punished. Show off so that the whole campus knows that someone is expressing love here. The boy thought his pursuit would soon come to fruition, but he didn't know that the girl actually had someone else in love. She whispered to everyone that the boy was causing her great trouble, and everyone just sat there in silence and laughed at him. The enthusiastic young man wrote several pages of love letter. The next day the love letter appeared on the principal's desk. He was punished to read out his love letter and self-criticism at the flag-raising ceremony, and the laughter from the whole garden made him feel ashamed. What's worse is that his parents were notified and went to the school. The boy had very strict family education. He was scolded and shamed, and suffered severe punishment at home. The boy ran out of the house in anger. He found the girl at her door and asked her to confirm and deny it, but was ridiculed by the girl and her friends who were at the party. It was at this time that I found Adrian, who was covered in wounds. His empty and desperate appearance curled up in the dark reminded me of myself who was once lying on the dirty ground. So we are the ones who understand each other the best. I am overly demanding of decency, and so is he. We are the same kind of people. Adrian, we came together because we were all hurt, and we wanted to lick each other's wounds. I thought people who have been hurt know how to protect each other, but I forgot that such people also know how to hurt each other. I looked at Adrian, who was still shaking with his fists clenched. Many nights, I sat alone on my bed, desperately trying to figure out why. What did I do wrong that made you not want to talk to me or go home? I couldn't figure it out. Adrian replied with a trembling voice. No, you're right. I was just confused for a moment. He spoke incoherently. Helen is back. She came to see me, just like I did back then. So you think you have regained your dignity? But it's not enough. You thought of me and wanted me to beg you humbly and use my dignity to fill your dignity. My voice was shaking. I said this in an almost unbelievable way, and even greater sorrow swept over my heart. No, listen to me, Margaret, I'm not actually. Adrian denied in vain. He took a panicked step forward, but I quickly dodged him. The determined and gentle boy back then finally turned into powder before my eyes. I gasped violently, feeling sad and ridiculous. Adrian, you make me sick. My colleague noticed something was wrong and rushed over to stand in front of me. I was shaking, grabbing her arm for strength. It was so embarrassing, so undignified. But looking at Adrian, whose eyes were red with fear, and looking at my colleague who was standing firmly in front of me, an absurd sound of shattering sounded in my heart. There is no need to maintain this relationship for the sake of respectability. It will do nothing but make me miserable. Excessive respectability will not make me happy. It is truly decent to throw away rotten things and accept occasional mess. The buzzing sound in my ears became weaker and weaker, and gradually disappeared, and I finally heard my colleague's anxious voice. Margaret, what happened to you? Are you okay? I'll take you to the hospital. I tried to smile. I'm fine. I feel better than ever. Over the past year, I have spent so much of my time on internal friction and trying to maintain my dignity that I have not been able to devote myself to my work. Now I have renewed enthusiasm for work and life. Taking advantage of business trips, I visited craft shops in unfamiliar cities and collected exquisite and beautiful crafts for myself again. I really like the little shops hidden in the street corners that have a sense of time. The boss was half lying on a recliner, fanning himself, and slowly telling me how each item came about. Every time I find a small item that tells a story, I feel surprised and happy. I started learning pottery. I was afraid of getting my clothes dirty and I spent a lot of effort but only managed to make bad products. But now I will sit in the corner for an afternoon, holding out a crooked little bowl and laughing with the boss. The more I make, the better looking the things I shape become. I made an appointment with my boss to pick up my latest work after get off work. I stepped out of the company door full of anticipation and saw Helen at first sight. She couldn't get into our company, and she blocked me at the door. Margaret. Helen called me from behind, and when I ignored her, she ran up to me and tried to grab my hand. I took a step to the side to avoid her. Are you free? Helen looked at me angrily. What did you say to Adrian? Why has he been ignoring me lately? If you want to see him, ask him, don't ask me. Helen crossed her arms and raised her voice. If it weren't for you, why would Adrian ignore me? Margaret, you say you've given up, but you're still pestering Adrian. People nearby looked here intentionally or unintentionally. Helen had a look of confidence. I found it quite funny. She probably thought I was still so sensitive. Miss Helen, why does a cheating man ignore his mistress? You shouldn't ask me, you should ask him. I am not interested in your life as a pair of rubbish. I also raised my voice. If you are so capable, go and persuade him to divorce me as soon as possible, and don't wait until the court summons is served to him. The looks of the people around her changed, and the faint whispers of discussion were directed at Helen. Seeing Helen's expression change, I smiled at her and walked away. I recently discussed with a very important client. I carefully prepared information for a week and planned to invite the other party to dinner. Because of the thorough preparation, the other party was very satisfied. The client raised her glass and said, "It's a pleasure to work with you, Miss Margaret." I also raised my glass with a smile, but another person took the glass from my hand and clinked it lightly with the customer. "That's natural. She has always been excellent." The client and I turned around in confusion and saw Adrian standing politely beside me. "Who is?" Adrian answered first, "I'm Margaret's husband, nice to meet you." I interrupted him and gave the client an apologetic smile, "He is my ex-husband. Some lingering emotional issues. I'm sorry to have affected this dinner." I took out a document from my bag and handed it to the client. "This is the detailed plan for this project. Please take a look at it first. I'll be back soon." Putting down the glass, I grabbed Adrian's clothes and led him out. "Adrian, what are you crazy about?" Adrian was confused by my question. "I just thought you were. If you have time to bother me, why not go get the divorce certificate from me?" Adrian's face darkened again. "I don't want a divorce." "Adrian, please save some dignity for yourself." Adrian turned pale after hearing my blunt words. He took out the ring I had thrown away and said, "Margaret, I know it was my fault in the past. Can't we start over?" He actually found the ring that had been lost for so long. I looked at the ring I had worn for 3 years, which the man held carefully in his hand. Unfortunately, it was too late. I said firmly, "No. I know you won't be with Helen again, and you should also know that I won't come back to be with you again." Adrian froze in place, as if something he didn't want to admit had been exposed. He was silent for a long time, then asked softly, "Do you really not love me anymore?" I shook my head. I've long stopped loving Adrian. I've only ever loved a boy who was close to me. He died a year ago. There was a loud bang in his mind, and Adrian staggered a few times, barely standing still. His tall figure suddenly collapsed, and he opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I walked past him toward the restaurant. When we passed each other, I heard him whisper, "I agree to divorce." I stood still and didn't look back. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Adrian and I have been in love for 4 years and married for 3 years. During these years, we have always understood each other the best. We know where each other's deepest scars are and how excessively we demand respectability. We gathered together to warm each other up, thinking we had found salvation. But in fact, none of us was healed. Just like I have never dared to step into a psychological clinic all these years, our spirits are still sick. So Adrian would look at Helen, who turned back. The person who made him lose all his dignity bowed to him, and he couldn't help but indulge in the pleasure of dignity. So even after being treated coldly everywhere and realizing that my love was gradually fading, I still tried hard to create the illusion of deep affection, thinking that I was still maintaining my dignity. But we all fail. When Adrian forgot his legal wife in front of all his friends and invited Helen, which completely shattered my dignity, the tight string in my heart finally broke. Going crazy gave me a break. I finally got out of the vicious circle of being overly respectable. If my disguised decency has already been seen through by others, if my decency cannot make me happy, then I don't want this forced respectability. The dirty little girl who fell on the street that year finally stood up again. I took the document from the president. Because of my outstanding performance, the company sent me to study abroad for a year. I smiled and said to the president, "I promise to complete the task." I stepped out of the company's door. It was a sunny day.